Good morning, friends. You are most welcome to Think Eyes channel. Today we are going to discuss Practicing Anthropology by MAAN IGNOU, and our topic is tourism. Let us begin the topic. Scope and contribution of anthropology in tourism studies. Conducting studies through fieldwork is an integral part of an anthropologist's work profile. As a discipline, anthropology has contributed invaluable information about the nature of human beings and what governs it. On the other hand, tourism is relatively a very recent addition as a serious discipline of study. Apart from having a major economic impact, tourism has been also considered as a major factor that brings about cultural exchanges when tourists interact with the local population. Over a period of time, this definitely causes changes in the behavioral patterns of the host population. Unplanned tourism activities can have serious consequences in the authenticity of the destination, or the very factor that made the place a must travel for the tourist may be lost. Strategic tourism management requires a clear understanding not only about the way of life of the host population but also about that of the visitors and how the meeting between the two could influence each other. Anthropological studies and records come in extremely handy in such assessments. Anthropologists the world over are recognizing the possibility of tourism as being a specialized subdiscipline of anthropology. At the same time, the planners of tourism are giving due respect to anthropological studies. The scope is unlimited. Let us now have a better understanding of the various avenues and possibilities of the anthropology and tourism. Cultural anthropology and tourism studies. As mentioned in the previous chapters early armchair, anthropologists mainly belong to Europe. Curiosity to understand completely different cultures compelled them to gather information about these. The source of information was mainly based on the accounts of travelers, missionaries, and administrators. It was only in the 20th century that anthropologists ventured to travel themselves in order to study new cultures. This method is known as fieldwork, which is the first hand systematic exploration of a variety of human cultures. This involves direct interaction between the field worker and his subject. One of the key elements in the study of tourism is to analyze its impact not only on the native culture but also the behavior of the tourist. In studying such impacts, anthropology has invaluable contribution to make. Smith says that human interaction and not business and marketing is the key factor in tourism's many paradoxes. This statement makes the link between anthropology and tourism all the more important. Anthropology makes it possible to gather first hand information which provides the primary data for studies in tourism. The information gathered in anthropological studies is extremely authentic, though sometimes it becomes difficult to make completely objective studies of another culture. The various techniques used by anthropologists are observation, interviews, case studies, and genealogy. The best approach to develop and study a cross-cultural perspective is the case study approach. While studying tourism impacts, the most important point is to analyze the effect of tourism on the culture of the society. For this, it is essential to have information and relevant data about the society before the tourists pour in and pollute the host communities. The work of early anthropologists comes handy in such situations. The first step is to learn about the society as it exists or had existed without any outside interference or influence. The second step is to study the subtle changes that occur or had occurred when tourism is or was introduced in it. This may not be visible, but anthropological studies along the way aid in identifying and analyzing these changes. The third step is to study all the changes in the host community since the development of tourism. This is the study of the visible changes in the host community due to tourism. Such information can be gathered only from detailed and often tedious fieldworks. By comparing each of these stages, a sound judgment on what the host community had been and what positive or negative impact tourism has had on it can be made. This goes a long way in helping all involved in the tourism industry, can be it the government or the private sector, to formulate sound and logical policies in tourism. Physical anthropology and tourism studies. This branch of anthropology, apart from studying man as a product of evolutionary process, also involves as analysis of human population. Both approaches revolve around a common theme of human variation and adaptation. This is important because men do not live in a vacuum. They are constantly interacting with the environment. This field considers such issues as how the environment has affected and continues to affect man's structure. Because this field deals with studying how the human physical form undergoes change, this branch of anthropology has had more inputs for the tourism industry than any other. It is seen from various research conducted that people relatively isolated from others apparently change very slowly in physical form, while populations having constant contacts with many structurally diverse people may change rapidly in bodily structure in a relatively short time. Physical anthropology answers such questions as what happens when people of different variety interbreed, or is there any relationship between man's physical type and his temperament, intelligence, spatial attitudes, or behavior in general. The answers to these questions are the prime concern for tourism policymakers, since this plays a significant role in the monitoring of tourism-borne disease like AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. In many countries like Thailand, where sex tourism is practiced, these studies contribute towards formulating therapies for educating high-risk groups like sex workers. Another interesting contribution of physical anthropological studies to tourism is to improve various facilities, especially in transportation. Let us let us see how. Somatometry, a division of anthropology, may be defined as systematized technique to measure living body including hand and face. Different types of instruments have been designed especially to measure different parts of the human body. Apart from classical anthropological studies, which deals with comparing the somatometric measurements of the different population of the world, these studies can go a long way in designing the different objects related to the tourism industry. For example, designing the seats in the car, designing of seats in the car, buses, and aeroplanes can be based on these studies to provide maximum comfort to tourists, specifically those who travel long distances. This enables in improving the quality of service the tourism industry provides to tourists. Such studies also contribute in designing first aid and insurance services, once again keeping in mind the physical condition of the tourist and the probable pathological or physiological changes that can occur when the tourist visits different places with a different environment. It is important here to mention another increasingly relevant branch of physical anthropology and how it can help in monitoring and controlling crimes due to tourism. This interesting field is known as forensic anthropology. It primarily aids in detecting criminals who operate under the guise of tourists. This science has unparalleled contribution, since through somatometric measurements it is possible to detect people under suspicion. This becomes all the more relevant in the new millennium, where tourism will emerge as one of the top industries of the world, so that no one could blame crime to tourism. You may find it amazing, and for what, and for that matter, even find it unimaginable to know that through somatoscopic observations it is even possible to detect any such criminal posing as tourist, during which he might have changed his physical appearance. You may find it amazing, and for that matter even find it unimaginable to know that through somatoscopic observation it is even possible to detect any such criminal posing as tourist, during which he might have changed his physical appearance. This becomes possible even after the advanced techniques to disguise like plastic surgery, because though it may be possible to change one, two, or more features, it is almost impossible to change the entire human structure. This field of anthropology detects even the minutest similarities, which go a long way in establishing the link between the criminal and a few of the available description and few of his available descriptions to the crime branch. This itself offers an interesting opportunities for those who wish to be linked to both anthropology and tourism. Archaeological anthropology and tourism studies. Archaeological anthropology attempts to trace the origin, growth, and development of the culture in the past. It attempts to reconstruct the forms of the past and to trace their growth and development in time. These studies play the role of detectives in uncovering the past, be it pre or post history. The archaeologists in most cases reconstruct the culture of the past from the material remains alone. Items like buried utensils, weapons, rubber sheets, stone carvings, figures of baked clay, ruins describe something of ancient culture, and to relate it to the environment in which it occurred, we can say that archaeologists make a major contribution to our knowledge of the cultural history and development. Through many studies, archaeologists have decided that cultural evolution has not been equally rapid in different parts of the world. These records by archaeologists give us many clues as to the ways in which cultures change, even complex factors that give rise to these changes are included in the extensive work. Since archaeological anthropologists mainly deal with excavations to discover artifacts, they attempt to build the cultural history of the man's past through physical evidences. Coming down to tourism, we have already seen that in modern world people like to take small breaks, and during this period many either visit spots with a different culture or visit spots which have historical evidences of the past culture, though the prime motive is entertainment, especially in complex societies. Authenticity is what people look for today in everything. People who are driven towards past cultures look for this very feature of authenticity. So, one alternative for entertainment and amusement is to exploit and explore tourism related with lost cultures. So, one alternative for entertainment and amusement is to exploit and explore tourism related with lost cultures. Archaeological anthropology does just this. It reconstructs past and tries to keep it as authentic as possible. Reconstruction or revival of ruins of temples, palaces, forts is the prime concern not only to those studying history, archaeology, or anthropology, but also for lay people who wish to, even though for a short time, experience the slow pace of life and the abundant luxuries of the past. Archaeological anthropologists contribute immensely to tourism. We can say that reconstruction of historical sites and tourism has always been closely associated. Anthropology of tourism calls for culturally appropriate ways of preserving sites. One problem that arises due to such archaeological studies is the effect these will have on communities living in and around such sites, as they will have to shift to a new location. To counter this problem, the government around the world look to exploit such resources as tourism products. It is essential here to integrate archaeological expeditions with economic benefits of tourism. Materials discovered become national and cultural property, which are displayed in other countries. Such displays motivate the people to travel to the respective country, and this further encourages tourism. It is important not to transform such displays into mere artifacts meant for amusement and entertainment, but to value these as invaluable properties of the past. Linguistic anthropology and tourism studies. The branch of cultural anthropology which studies human beings' language is called linguistics. Language of the all people, past and present interest anthropologists because it is the chief vehicle through which humans preserves and transmits their culture from generation to generation. Linguistic anthropologists, apart from studying the description of the structure of the language, historical linguistics, compare and contrast the languages of different people, comparative linguistics, and study how language is used in actual speech and cognition, social linguistics, or ethnolinguistics. Both comparative and social linguistics throw light on universal properties of the language. Thus, language is a vital component of the human cultural knowledge. Apart from this, the expert also compare languages with one another to determine the features common to language everywhere. Human language is a remarkably universal aspect of the human culture and is intimately related to everything man is, man does, and man thinks. Above all, a relatively new field of linguistic anthropology is to study its many interrelations between the language of a people and the changes it undergoes when it comes in contact with a group of culturally different people. This is especially significant while studying the socio-cultural impact of tourism because through tourism people of host community interact with tourists. This contact has had tremendous impact on the spoken language, especially on the natives. We now attempt to see how this occurs since tourism is also a business activity in which the natives offer their services to the tourists. During such interaction, two people speaking different languages come to contact. They, in the process, attempt to pick up certain dialects and key phrases from each other languages. However, major contents of messages are communicated through nonverbal language. This makes it possible for a better understanding between the two. In this effort, the native tries harder because for whatever service he provides to the tourist can be offered only if he understands the requirements of the tourist. This is also important since the native competes with his own people to gain the business brought in by the tourist. It goes without saying that the tourist would prefer and feel comfortable with the native who speak his language. This interesting interaction in the modern world becomes relevant to linguistic anthropologists since the cross cultural intermingling causes certain unique changes not only in the speech but also affects the behavior to some extent. Thank you very much.